Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Can't Teach Size, a hockey podcast. Apparently, we're a hockey podcast. It's been a minute. I mean, it's been a while since we've recorded anything. We kind of took the off season off. It's the off season. You got to enjoy it, right? Lyss, we're gonna do some chatting today about the Winnipeg Jets. You know, both of our favorite teams, of course. First off, it's been a super interesting offseason for the Jets. How are you feeling as we have begun training camp? You and I both went and caught a practice the other day together. How are you feeling on this Winnipeg Jets team? And then we'll break it all down.
It can never be a simple answer, can it? Like, I want to give you an answer that's like, I'm kind of, at the end of the day, it's like a mid sort of thing, but I actually am feeling good about them. Like, I'm feeling fine. Like, I actually, like, we'll get into division predictions and things like that in another episode and all that. I don't feel terrible about them looking at roster projections and knowing that we still have our goalie and things like that. I think they're actually going to be successful this year. That being said, the reason I'm like mid on it is because I think that had they gone a different direction, I would be higher on them 4 years from now than I am on this current team that we have, if that makes sense.
That I think I get what you mean. Why don't you break that down just a tiny bit more? What were you hoping would have happened this offseason, and like contrast how you felt at the start of the offseason to now, you know?
Right. Well, I mean, they were backed into a corner with the Pierre-Luc Dubois thing, and that one, the way they went about that trade kind of set for me the tone of how the rest of the summer was going to go. So we can dive in a little bit more to those pieces, but getting back roster players as opposed to assets made it clear that this team still wanted to be competitive without Pierre-Luc Dubois. So to me, that made it a lot less surprising when they chose not to deal Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuyck. So the reason I am kind of like, yeah, well, like all those things that I said is that I do feel like it would have been in their best interest to sell Pierre-Luc Dubois for parts and then do the same with Hellebuyck and Scheifele and all those guys or whatever, and lean on some of these future pieces they have coming up the pipe. Obviously, everyone knows how high I am on Cole Perfetti. And then when you have, like, it looks like we have some decent goaltending coming up the pipe. That's always been my fear as well, is that if the Jets lose out on the window with Connor Hellebuyck, they'll never have a window again. And I may bite my tongue on that. It's obviously so early, and that's a lot of pressure to put on those two kids. Between Dan Santos and Milic, like, there's some potential down there. So I kind of was on the team of just recoup absolutely everything you can get for these three really valuable players. And it's not obviously what happened. So
Yeah, that is, as you say, not quite exactly what happened. Myself, when I look at this Jets team, I think you and we usually end up having very similar kind of vibes towards the team as like, you know, in regards to, you know, what direction should they go. I think we'll talk a lot about direction here because I think that's the big key about this offseason, is that, you know, coming into it, it was not really clear how they were going to maneuver out of the PLD situation, how they were going to maneuver with Blake Wheeler, for example, obviously now bought out and with the Rangers, and how they were going to navigate, you know, if they wanted to try and do some sort of rebuild on the fly. And they kind of did a little bit of the retool kind of vibe where, again, getting back, you know, Gabe Vilardi, Alex Iafallo, and Rasmus Kupari for Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean, none of those players, in my opinion, are the exact same caliber, and you're not as for sure that they can be the same caliber as Pierre-Luc Dubois. I really like Gabe Vilardi. I have some questions about you know, what he'll be able to do in Winnipeg here, but in general, I am a fan of his. I just am not too sure to see exactly how this season is going to play out, because with the Winnipeg Jets, we all know that they kind of run it on vibes, on how are we feeling this month? Are we feeling like we are going to be a contender? We can be a contender. What I really when I look at the offseason that Kevin Cheveldayoff had here, it very much screams to me, give yourself a chance to be good. And I'm not sure that they will be. I do look at this team, and they are starting to bring me back in a little bit. There are some key things that I look at around the roster that make me feel more confident than last year. I think the roster, I'm not sure if I want to say it's better than last year. I would say I have more confidence in the D that's this year for sure, with the emergence of Dylan Sandberg. But when it comes to the forwards, like again, I really think that it might be a struggle to get the same amount of what's the word, um, production. Thank you. That's where my worries land. But in general, I look at this team and I go, they're going to make some noise. I like that they're giving some more room for Cole Perfetti to come in and play 2C this year. I think that he is a type of player who would be great in the middle of the ice with the vision that he has. We hear Mark Scheifele pumping his tires already. That he's been working all this offseason. He's put on a bunch of muscle, blah blah blah, this and that. All the hockey player sayings about the offseason, but it's going to be a very interesting season here in Winnipeg. That's for sure.
And I'm curious to hear your thoughts. So at least for me personally, I always find that when it comes to a team, when you're unsure of how the year is going to go for them, to me, it usually comes down to their big talent. So for example, if the Winnipeg Jets had kept Pierre-Luc Dubois and kept Blake Wheeler, whatever, and then traded a bunch of their bottom six pieces, it would look very different, but I would still expect them to look kind of similar. And I think the big questions always fall into the top part of the lineup. So the big notable differences are obviously losing your 2C and adding in some more unknown quantities. I think we like the D. I agree with you that there's some more known quantities, and maybe we can get into our hot takes after, where I think that Neil Pionk, we've probably seen the worst of him. I don't think he's going to be worse this year. In fact, I think he might get a little bit better. But I'm just unsure. What are your thoughts on kind of how the replacements for Pierre-Luc Dubois look, and what you think Gabe Vilardi in particular is going to bring to the top six?
Yeah, I actually did a little. I did a bit of watching just his highlights. Again, it's only highlights, so you only get the key points where things all go right. But Gabe Vilardi is, first of all, a huge body. So I think that he will command a lot of presence on the ice. I think he'll be great. He seems like he's a bit of a hound on the puck, so it looks like he'll be able to win a lot of board battles, which is something that I think we have a lot of players who work well away from the boards. So adding another player who's willing to get into the dirtier areas, I think is super key for the Jets. It kind of reminds me of bringing Nino Niederreiter in at the trade deadline last year. I mean, obviously he's a different player, Gabe Vilardi, that is, but I really like his skill set. He's got a great shot. A good chunk of his goals were just straight up shots from top of the circle when he was able to make space. The one thing I really noticed though, he has great hands in front of the net, and he also, because he is a big body, he's able to not only fight off defenders. He's great at tipping pucks. He's got a good hand-eye coordination, which should fit really well with the Jets' offensive system, with running the defense a lot running the offense through the defense.
100%.
So I think that he will be a welcome addition. I would imagine he takes the net front spot on the top power play, because that seems to be where he played in LA, and it looks like his breakout season, it worked really well for him there. I'm really excited to see what he can bring to the table, because again, he's a player who's a bit different from PLD in the sense of, PLD was a hard worker as well too, but I think that PLD sometimes just seemed disengaged a lot, and I think that that's what frustrated Jets fans the most, right? I mean, as a PLD stan, I'm sure that's the one thing that you kept looking at going, come on, man, I mean, I'm fighting for you every day. I'm putting my life on the line. And
you're giving me nothing.
Exactly, yeah. And as far as Kupari and Iafallo is a great defensive, a very good defensive forward. He's not going to score a ton of points, and again, my question marks around the Jets are they going to be able to replace the scoring of PLD and Blake Wheeler? But Iafallo, has scored kind of he's been like a 15 goal scorer in the past. Vilardi he broke out this past season and had 23, I want to say. So hopefully they can replace the scoring with the depth that they have. But my big thing with those two is that they both are good defensively. If you look at their analytics from last year, they're both great defensive players. And a player that the Jets brought in last year, Vlad Nemesnikov, great defensive player. And he was able to kind of be thrown on a bunch of different lines and just provide a bit of a guy that you kind of can put with anyone and and he'll be generally good. Can kind of cover for other players. So seeing Gabe Vilardi already in the top six with Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, I think that's a good combo for him. But I would have loved to see Alex Iafallo in that top six because I think that he also can provide a defensive conscience for a line that is a little more crazy than Adam Lowry and Mason Appleton. But I think that they will provide a lot of things that the Jets need this year.
Yeah, 100%. And Brady and I were able to catch up with our good buddy Sean yesterday over at training camp, and he used an analogy that I really like when he was talking about defensive forwards and just talking about the concept of treading water. And we know that our bottom six is capable of treading water, right? Like being defensive, like they're not, no one is hurting, no one is being harmed by them being on the ice, but it's that next step that they have to take. And if this team wants to go from okay to good to great, is more production, lower in the lineup. And I don't think it's a big needle mover, but it still is a piece of the puzzle. So you're right that I think Alex Iafallo, throwing him on like a second line, for example, if it were to be a fit with some really offensive players, could help prop them up a little bit. But throwing him on a line with someone like Adam Lowry, which is what we're all expecting, who already is really good at that whole treading water piece. And we know that Adam Lowry can be a little bit of an offensive black hole. And it's okay when you have the right configurations in the lineup, but I just am wondering if they bring a similar skill set to a line that needs a little bit more of the areas that they lack.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think this is kind of a good transition maybe to talk about just the general mentality. This wasn't in our notes for what we were to talk about, but I think that it's a good thing to talk about is the kind of top six, bottom six vibe that at least I personally am getting from the Jets when I look at this roster. Currently, I mean, I'll just read out the lines very quickly. Kyle Connor, Scheifele, Vilardi as one line, Ehlers, Perfetti, Niederreiter, Iafallo, Lowry, and Appleton, and then Barron, Kupari, and Nemesnikov. There's a very clear separation between those top two lines and the third line. So, and of course the fourth line as well too. So my thing when I look at this Jets team, and even just the mentality that they had with the replacements for PLD and Wheeler, of course, is they went quantity over quality, right? So my brain is naturally going, okay, how can we have success with that quantity over quality? And I look at a team like the Seattle Kraken last year. Every 20 goal scorer, every player that they had was a 20 goal scorer. Not actually, but I mean, what, they had like 9 or 10 20 goal scorers.
It was something stupid. Yeah, it was crazy.
And so looking at that, and then looking back at the Jets here, obviously Gabe Vilardi, 20 goal scorer. Iafallo, I think he's like again 15 goal scorer, and that's where again you start to see the drop off. I love that we have Nino Niederreiter again. He's a Money in the Bank 20 goal scorer pretty much any year. So he'll be a welcome addition in the top six there. But again, like having, for example, like Mason Appleton, a guy who I still think he's got a little bit more to give offensively, but looking at the line that he's on, he looks like he's going to be just the they're going to be the get this shift over with and make sure that nothing happens. The treading water line, as you said, or as Sean said. So yeah, and then again, Morgan Barron, Kupari, and Nemesnikov. Again, Kupari, even Nemesnikov, and even Barron. We know that they can put some goals in the net, but hopefully, again, it's used more as these lines are used more in an equal sense. We can't have that fourth line, a guy like Nemesnikov who's so useful, played like 6 to 9 minutes a night. Like those guys got to get a lot more minutes, but unfortunately. That would then take away from the top guys. So coming back to replacing the goals, the last thing I'll say on it, when you lose more pieces, it means that the pieces you already have might need to step up. So hopefully this year we see even more usage of Nikolai Ehlers. One of the key things when they went on their slide last year was that Nick Ehlers was being used a lot less than he was in the first half of the season. So hopefully this year, Bones really realizes that he needs to use that line or use that player properly and effectively in order to get the points out of him. And it's really just about optimizing the lineup, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that leads into a good conversation that I think comes down to, like you said, replacing the points and all that good stuff, which I fully agree with. And I think The issue is that 2C role that has been a black hole for the Winnipeg Jets since they came back in 2011. Like, I'm serious. Like, I remember having this conversation for how many years now? Like Andrew Kopp, Kevin Hayes, like Paul Stastny, everyone and their mother has filled in that second C role. And obviously I'm very excited about Cole Perfetti getting a crack at that role this year. He spoke himself, and I totally agree with him. And this is sort of my perspective, even before he said it, about the whole idea of giving a player like him more options, more ice, and just sort of more space to have a little bit more impact on the game, which is really fantastic. And I do think he has the potential, but he's still a very unproven quantity. Like, and obviously I'm very high on him, as most people are, but that doesn't mean that he couldn't still very much disappoint us, or very much not become the player that we want him to be. Because the 2C on a line with player like especially a player like Nikolai Ehlers, like that's not necessarily a chance for success for everybody. Like, you need to be ready to match that speed, to put the pucks where they need to be, and also play against likely most other NHL teams, second lines.
Mhm.
We often see the 1-3-1-3 and then the 2-2 split when it comes to matching. So if that's the case, you have to fall back defensively, which Cole Perfetti is very good at. Puck management, does a lot of things really well, but caved in a zone with him and Nikolai Ehlers and the wrong pairing. There could be some room for some red flags to jump up there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of unknown quantities around this player coming in that role. And it's not just what he'll do, but it's how it'll affect people around him. And I don't want to put that much pressure on him, but like, there is a chance that if he has Nikolai Ehlers on his wing, or whoever else, if they start moving things around, that person, tanks or they soar. And that's my hope. And that's what
Mhm.
I think Cole Perfetti has the ability to do. But it's not just the unknown that is him, it's the unknown that is the entire second line when you put someone like him there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like looking at him and his usage previously, like he previously has had pretty decent defensive numbers when you look at his analytics. But that is when he was been playing with, last year he was playing with like, was it PLD and Wheeler, right? Again,
I want to say mostly Connor when he was playing. Wasn't it the three of them?
I think
Or did
it's
that
I think
line get split
it's
up?
he was with Wheeler for a while. That's all I remember.
Okay.
Because at the start of the year it was supposed to be the super line, the Connor, Scheifele, Ehlers, and then I think it was Wheeler, Dubois,
Right.
and Perfetti. And again, like he's had good defensive metrics in the past, but again, that's while playing as a winger on a line with guys like Blake Wheeler, who teams might be going in, watching the video, going, okay, this is a player who maybe isn't as fleet of foot. We can maybe by putting pressure on him, kind of expose him a little bit more. So then naturally more attention gets put to him. Oh, Pierre-Luc Dubois, we got to put more attention on that guy. Whereas Cole Perfetti, teams aren't coming into this going, we have to shut down this one guy. Whereas now this year, putting him into a 2C role, like that's a very important spot, and he's going to get, if he is able to get the success there and maintain that spot, he's going to get a lot more of a spotlight from the other team's defenses in their preparation in this and their that, right? So yeah, like I think that he is up for the task. I don't think that you need to be the most the fastest player to be a centerman. I do really like the pairing of him with Nikolai Ehlers. Previously I wanted him with Kyle Connor, but now while he is playing center, I think giving him a winger who you can just kind of pass the puck to and he'll get you out of the zone. I think that is perfect for Perfetti, and again, putting him in the middle gives him so much more room to, as he said, more vision, more ability to make plays, and that's his strong suit. So I really hope, I'm a big Perfetti fan as well. I got his jersey, back here somewhere. So I really hope that he can succeed in that role. And if not, Gabe Vilardi was previously a centerman as well too, so you can try him there. Vlad Nemesnikov can always jump up from that fourth line. Morgan Barron used to be a C. I'm not saying he's going to jump into the 2C, but I'm just saying if you mix things around, there's a lot of potential centermen on this team. Exactly. But yeah, that's how I feel on Perfetti, because I really think that this is going to be a key season for him. I would peg him as a breakout player this year. I mean, he kind of already had a good season previously. I just hope he can stay healthy. Like, that's my big thing. I really hope he can stay healthy. But the Jets are never able to stay healthy. So
No, for sure. And I think I like kind of the skill set of that line. You brought it up briefly earlier, but I think it's something that we can never speak enough about when it comes to how the Jets funnel so many shots through their defensemen, but have awful net front coverage in the offensive zone. Like, it's just a weird thing that should go hand in hand, but doesn't for them. And I think if you have Cole Perfetti dishing smart pucks, you're going to have better shots just across the board. But also just like looking at the forward line alone, like Nino Niederreiter is able to take that net front role a little bit more, because you called him this yesterday, Brady, when we were together. He is a very like meat and potatoes hockey player. So if you have, as you mentioned before, Gabe Vilardi can take those shots and all those different kinds of things, and like a little bit more of a strategic shooter and things like that. So if you have Cole Perfetti, who's got guys in every spot, obviously he's got the defenseman, and you've got someone down low in the actual offensive zone who can shoot in Vilardi, and Perfetti himself if he feels like letting it rip. And then you can plunk that extra guy, and not to call Nino Niederreiter an extra, but maybe in this case he is. Also, I realized I started going and I started talking about Vilardi instead of Ehlers, but you know what I mean, where you have, Ehlers who can stay in a spot and shoot. Vilardi would be the same way if you were on this line. Like, I'm not, it's not super specific to either of them, but you have options. So now you can throw Nino Niederreiter in front of the net when you have some of your most strategic shots coming through, and hopefully a couple more banging and crashing goals down there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to hop over maybe to the defense here, or do you want to continue on with the forwards? Because I think that we've kind of covered the entire forward side of things.
Yeah, the only thing left on the forward group is that I think there actually is one area that you and I do disagree a little bit that we didn't talk about too much, which is just who falls onto that third line wing with Iafallo and Adam Lowry, because I am team Morgan Barron, and maybe you are too, but you're more practical than I am, and you're like, it's going to be Mason Appleton. But I think this team really likes Morgan Barron. I think they're going to give him a
Yeah.
track, and I think he has more offensive output and a higher ceiling than Mason Appleton does. I agree with you that we probably haven't seen the best of Mason Appleton yet. But I don't really feel like it's going to be enough to justify that spot, and I really want Morgan Barron to sit up there.
Yeah, absolutely. I like, for me, like, I am not the biggest Appleton fan. I'll just be honest with you. I think that he is decent. I think he's a good treading water. I think he's a totally average, fine third line guy. But I look at the third line right now, and you have Iafallo and Lowry, and those are both high defensive guys, I would say. So I think that adding a guy like Barron, I actually completely agree with you. When I first saw the lineups come out, actually, I wanted Nemestikov to be with Lowry, because I thought that last year that they had a really good connection that I thought was not really utilized properly, or not utilized properly, but didn't get the chance to utilize for long enough, just because of the injuries that were at center, as well as moving Shifley to the wing and putting Dubois up there as well. So I would have loved to see Nemestikov be on that third line over Appleton. I think he's kind of a fourth line guy, but it is what it is. But I am also a big fan of Morgan Barron. And you know what? This kind of leads me into I guess we're talking Lowry, we're talking Barron. Do you want to talk a little bit about the captaincy? How do you feel about Lowry?
I don't have a lot, more to say that I feel like hasn't been said by a lot of people, because my sort of takeaway is always deeper and more like nuanced than it needs to be. I can never say, well, I like it or I don't like it. I don't like the direction the Jets chose. I didn't want them to name a captain this year. I wanted them to sell off a lot of their assets. I wanted them to name someone when they are ready to, step up and actually have a good solid team, like a Rucker McGroarty or a Cole Perfetti as captain sort of thing. So that's why I disagree with it. But as far as like, if you're going to do it right now, and maybe this is a good segue into the defense a little bit as well. Like, I'm happy they gave it to him over Josh Morrissey. And I know that's a little bit of a hot take, but I think Josh has had a lot going on in the last couple of years, and he had an amazing season last year. And I think if you threw the burden of the captaincy, and I know it's not entirely a burden, but at the end of the day, it is a burden. It's an honor as well, and there are a lot of good things that come with it, but it is fully a burden to have that kind of tied to you at all times. And I think it would severely impact him, and maybe not so much his output. Like, no one's expecting him to have the same season as he did last year as far as actual points go. But I think Adam Lowry is a guy who can handle it. You get what you get with Adam Lowry. You're gonna have 30 consecutive games where he won't score a goal, and that's not going to change because of the captaincy. And he's a player that I think the risk of throwing that additional like, that additional like role basically on him, it's not going to have as much of an impact on the team, kind of just across the board. It's a little bit more of like a neutral move. So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, and I actually will take and expand upon the neutral move. That's why I don't like it personally.
Yeah.
Like I am totally fine with it. To be very clear, I like Adam Lowry. I think Adam Lowry will be a great captain. I think he deserves it. There's no anything I'm saying right now has nothing to do with Adam Lowry. I think he's fantastic. I love him. I'm glad he's a Jet. Bit of an expensive contract. It is what it is. For me though, more it's the symbolism of it. It's the it's what it signifies for the team. And again, my frustrations with this past offseason, despite all the good things I've said about the Jets this year and their potential, and this and that, I just don't see a world where the Jets are winning this year, like winning the cup this year or next year. And so really my whole thing was, for the future, do everything you can for 3 years from now. I think you had a very similar take to me, to myself in regards to that. But for me, like, I think that Josh Morrissey symbolizes a lot more the way that this team is moving and the way that I think a lot of the fans want the team to move. And also, like, again, I it frustrates me a little bit when I think about there's now a little bit more significance given to Lowry. Like, I think that
That's a
no
big piece too.
no roster spot should be it has to be this player here, it has to be this player here. I think everything should be fluid. You reward the players who are playing the best and playing the hardest, while you should penalize the players who don't want to give it their all, who aren't playing that well, or sorry, not penalize, but try to figure out what would work better for them. And I look at Adam Lowry, and he's a third line center on our team, on a contending team. He's probably a fourth line center, and I feel like this kind of just cements his role as the third line center even more. And even if we go back to when the Jets were a very, very good team, when they, the 27-18 years, sorry to bring it up and make everyone sad again, but we go back to those years, like Lowry was playing a fourth line, but also kind of a second line role. I don't know. It was really weird, but
Weird times.
They had 3 scoring lines and a shutdown line. And essentially, when I look at this here, like, I just don't want there to be a case where maybe Morgan Barron is playing his way into some third line minutes, but you can't move this guy, you can't move that guy. Rasmus Kupari, who's going to be the fourth line center, if he comes out and has a great start to the season, I think that you should be able to reward that and give him the chance to have more minutes and be able to play on the third line, in quotes. That's really more the like just some of the frustrations with it. And again, I think that the what it represents for the team is picking Adam Lowry is a very Winnipeg Jets pick.
Oh my God, yeah.
Right? And what is a Winnipeg Jets pick? A Winnipeg Jets pick is safe. A Winnipeg Jets pick is, concerning of the future, but also not really concerned to
not at the expense of today.
Exactly. And that's more my frustration. And again, to be clear, I am very happy. I think Adam Lowry deserves it. And hey, maybe in 3 or 4 years when his contract's up, someone else, maybe Josh Morrissey, has grown into that role a little bit better. Maybe one of the younger guys has stepped up. I know you're thinking in your head right now, Lyss, Cole Perfetti. Maybe we'll see one day.
I want Rutger.
Or Rutger. Sorry, Rutger McGroarty, of course. But yeah, so maybe in a couple of years it gets handed off and he can even stay with the team. Maybe this is a move to make it so that Lowry wants to re-sign in, I don't know, whatever, 3 years for a cheap deal because he's just happy to be here because he likes it. He's made his money and made his bread and made his home here in Winnipeg. And most players don't want to move. Right. So
yeah, well, you said it. That's the Winnipeg way, is the just happy to be here. But I think the biggest thing, and then we can, move on from this, is that concern that you have is just, it's not founded in nothing, right? Because I think that was the big thing with Blake Wheeler, was that they're different players, but Blake Wheeler was a second line player when, like, in the time of his captaincy. who probably should have been in a third line role, but then he
Eventually, yeah.
stayed at that second line role when he should have been in a third line role. And most of us believe it's because of the captaincy. You just bump that down by a number. Adam Lowry is a fine third line player right now, but I am concerned that if it comes time, like you said, for him to be a fourth line player, they're going to keep him there and it's going to be at the expense of others. So that's always a fear because we've seen it happen already and we know that this team is capable of doing that. So it always is just like kind of like a nagging whatever, right? So you're right. Most of this, none of this, frankly, is about Adam Lowry. It's all about the team and it's always about the team. So that's why it's hard to be like, oh, I don't really like it because the guy rocks. He loves Winnipeg. He does so much good work here.
Yeah.
Like everything about what he does with the Toba Center is like
Oh,
stick
absolutely.
taps. Like fuck yeah, like it's so good. Like it's excellent to do those things that actually really have an impact on the community that you live in. Like I just I think very highly of him. So that's why it's always like with an asterisk when you start talking about why you struggle with it.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I think you addressed it perfectly. It's not about Adam Lowry at all. None of my criticisms are towards him. I think he's fantastic. I love him as a player. I love him as a guy. He's a great dude. Happy he's on our team because he's a guy who's gonna go in there and drop the gloves and you know. But no, but yeah, I think it is very good to highlight the work that he does in the community, and that is certainly a very, very important thing to consider here. Absolutely.
Because that's what you
And
want in a captain is someone you can trot out to represent the city that you live in. And it's somewhere like Winnipeg where you're a sports person, but you're also mainstream media and entertainment because that's what sports are
yeah,
here.
yeah, absolutely. And again, comes when it comes down to it, I lost my train. Lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. I got a notification on my desktop and it completely made me lose my train of thought. Whatever. Oh, no, I got it. I'm sorry. When it comes down to it, if there's any player that you're gonna bet on, you're gonna bet on to stand up and go cut the shit, guys, I would say it's Adam Lowry. So you know what?
Also true.
I'll take it for the next wave of Jets players. Maybe that's what they were thinking. He's the guy who is gonna make sure shit doesn't get bad and shitty like it was before. So, I'm not in the dressing room. I don't know how it goes. I don't know who's the loudest, but I would guess that Lowry's one of them. Anyways. Okay. Well, we're it's already been 32 minutes here. The D pair, coming to this year, we'll just briefly chat the D pairs quickly, and then maybe quickly the Scheifele and Hellbuck contracts. We'll see what we want to get to. Do you have any preference for either of those?
Yeah, I mean we're talking pretty actively about roster players right now, so maybe we can touch on that. I don't expect the decor to look any different this year than it did last year. But if there's one thing about me, it's that I love psychoanalyzing training camp. I don't go to
Yeah.
watch hockey. I go to try and read everybody's mind. And Brady and I were looking yesterday at some of the pairings and things like that. And you have Josh Morrissey babysitting Salmonson because Salmonson is someone who needs babysitting, but also has the highest ceiling of most of the people who need babysitting sort of stuff.
He's
To
exciting.
I love him. I'm obsessed. One of the most like notable pairings to me, and it wasn't one that we were able to watch because we watched the wrong group.
Yeah.
Is Logan Stanley and Kyle Capobianco. To me, those are two guys they've written off. If I'm being completely honest with you, that's what that pairing tells me. I don't believe it because it's Logan Stanley and because it's the Winnipeg Jets. But the fact that Ville Heinola is with Nate Schmidt makes me believe that they want to give him more of a chance and more of a leash than they want to give Logan Stanley, which is the right call.
Wow. You would say that. You're biased in this matter. We all know.
I'm biased. You're Logan Stanley.
We all know where your your allegiances lie here. But no, I completely agree. And that was as soon as they announced the teams. What I found, again, the most important things that I found was that Schmidt, DeMello, and Dylan were all in a group with Chisholm, Heinola, and Bauer. Yeah, Bauer.
Yeah.
Not that I think that Bauer has a huge shot of usurping Heinola and Chisholm, but especially considering waivers eligibility and all that dumb shit that we all know is important to the Jets because they've refused to clear out any room. But yeah, so this year again, I do completely agree with you. We're gonna say it again. Maybe put a little quarter in the Hinola jar of maybe this year, but I do agree with you that I think that he'll get a little bit more of a shot this year. It seems like just based off of again what we were saying, the pairings that they had, he has potential to potentially make it onto the roster. Again, they get, is it 8D slots usually, at least with this team. So my guess would be obviously the top 6 is kind of signed and shut and signed, sealed, and shut. With having Morrissey, DeMello, Dillon, Pionk, Sandberg, and Schmidt all there. And then you get your last 2 guys, and it's probably going to be, I would guess they waive Cabo Bianco. They might still keep Stanley, just because he's not waivers exempt. And also they might be able to trade him for something. And, he's already requested a trade and blah, 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 all that stuff. But if you do that, then you have to send Hinola down, and Chisholm will have to stay with the squad because he is not waivers exempt anymore either. So that's the big thing. I think the Jets learned from the whole Kovacevic situation last year that, you can't just be throwing young defense who you've been developing for years onto waivers, because you'll lose it and it'll come back to bite you eventually.
Yeah. No,
So
I think
I
what's
hope they learned
hard.
that is.
Yeah, no, well, you never know. I think the thing that's just kind of disheartening about it all is that, like you said, that top 6 is done. Like that's
Yeah.
it. Those are the guys. And so when you have all these guys, like it's not like there's a rotating 6th spot that you can run them through and all these different kinds of things, because they tried that, someone won it, and then that was it.
Yeah.
Like there's no other room for that, and it lost them Kovacevic, which I think at the end of the day is probably a non-issue.
Yeah, it's
but
fine,
it's
but
more the principle of the thing, and it's gonna keep happening. And like Logan Stanley to me is textbook 7th defenseman. I actually don't
yeah.
mind him whatsoever as the 7th defenseman.
Yeah.
Throw him in every 6 games or whatever if
Someone's
you need
hurt,
to, or
sure.
cool. I don't mind. I don't care about that. Obviously, everyone knows my whole issue with him has been what has happened at his expense.
It's not anything about the player,
It's
it's
not
just
about
what he
him.
signifies.
Exactly. So that's why Logan Stanley in that particular role I don't mind whatsoever. But yeah, like between Hanel and Chisholm, like it's not going to look good for somebody. So it sucks, and I don't know what the answer is, because that's always the other thing. It's maybe you don't trade for Dillon and Schmidt in the same summer when you know that you have all this coming up the pipe when those guys have term. And like I don't know what the answer is or what the answer would have been. It's just unfortunate, but every team
Yeah.
has their unfortunate. So I can't pretend that the Winnipeg Jets are the worst, team in the world at, XYZ or anything like that.
They
But
are, though.
it's just,
I'm kidding.
yes, but they are. Anyways, that's the end of the story. Yeah. So it is what it is. And we're not sitting here being like our team is the worst, but it is something to acknowledge, and it's a point of contention for a lot of people.
For sure. Yeah, it's tough. We'll see who ends up getting the short end of the stick, but it'll be Villy. It'll be Villy, at least to start the season, and then it'll be till December, and then it'll be till the end of next season until he's not waivers exempt, and then we face the music. All right, let's get this kind of wrapped up here. Final things. Who stays and who goes? Scheifele, Nino Niederreiter, and Connor Hellebuck. All expiring deals. Who stays, who goes? Who signs? Who walks? Do they trade? Do they don't?
Okay.
Give me answers.
Here's how I play the year out to be. No one gets traded because the Jets finish in a playoff spot. And as we learned from the Florida Panthers, hashtag just get in. And I think the Winnipeg Jets are the perfect team to be like, yes, just get in, because that's what they're excellent at doing, is just getting in. So I don't foresee anyone getting traded. That being said, if they're in a pinch or whatever, Nino Niederreiter is the first one to go. Unless the phones are ringing off the hook on Connor Hellebuck and they make an offer that they can't refuse.
Yeah.
However, I have a feeling they probably got a couple of offers that they shouldn't have refused this summer, so I don't know what it would take. I don't foresee any of them getting traded. I do think before the trade deadline comes, we get a Mark Scheifele extension. I see it coming.
Ooh.
And I also, and I'll be completely honest with you, like I think there might be a Connor Hellebuck one too. I think Nino Niederreiter goes. I like, and I don't know. It's kind of a
That's one.
non-factor.
I think they take the risk on that one, and if they lose it, I
Yeah,
don't think they give a shit. It is what
yeah,
it
but
is.
they traded him for what, a second or something
A
like that
second
last year.
this year coming up.
Right. So it's kind of whatever. And I like the guy. Don't get me wrong, but it's whatever. I think they both stay. And maybe I'm just being optimistic because if we couldn't trade them for assets when we could get a full year plus, last year when we knew this situation was coming up, hopefully it means we get, we don't lose them for nothing. But I I don't know. I don't think Kevin Cheveldayoff is anyone's fool. So I feel like there's something kind of cooking here that, and I don't think it's fully just that he's willing to take a gamble on this team and that they're going to win a Stanley Cup this year and then he's okay with them walking. I don't think it's that shallow. I feel like there's something else happening or they're getting ready to do. I think they might both get extended.
Yeah, I unfortunately agree with you. When I look at this team, I think they're good enough. And maybe this is a little tease because we're going to be recording some standings previews shortly. I have the Jets making the playoffs. And you know what? I'll spoil it. I have them in third place in the Central, which is
Oh my God.
crazy. I know, right? I hope I hope I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows?
This
But look,
division also stinks.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Who knows? The Blackhawks can make it this year. Hey, Connor Bedard is a madman. Anyways, that's a different recording. Coming back to the Jets here, yeah, like I look at these guys and it seems like the Jets have, in regards to re-signing the two big guys, the Scheifele and Hellebuck, I think they are both dependent on each other, in my opinion. I don't. There's absolutely no goddamn way Hellebuck good grief, I cannot speak. Hellebuck re-signs if Mark Scheifele doesn't. There's no, and I can see a scenario where Scheifele resigns
Non-zero. I agree.
without Hellebuck, but I think that if he resigns, I think that is very key and very important for Hellebuck. But also this year, I also think that if things start going not great, if there are some injuries, if things just don't go according to plan, I think Mark Scheifele is the oh my goodness, what a candidate to one, get better offers than you were getting in the offseason, because I think everyone kind of has this weird sullied reputation thought around him.
So weird.
Whereas, and don't get me wrong, I understand he's kind of a bit of a baby, he's a bit of a suck, and he is kind of annoying. He doesn't play defense, this and that, but he scores a lot of goddamn goals. And I think as soon as the season starts, I think that will come up, and that will be very, very clear to other teams. Is that if you can straighten him out, he is potentially a top 10 center, sometimes top 15, and if you are just flush with riches on the center position, he can play wing as well too, just like almost any centerman can.
Sorry, any NHL team that is considering the playoffs, if you could bring in that guy for half
absolutely
retained, oh my God, that is the best trade deadline acquisition that we will have seen in the last 5 years. And this is coming from a Mark Scheifele hater. Like, he is so unbelievably effective offensively.
Yeah, he's very good. He's very good. But yeah, so I do think that there's I think that if the trade deadline rolls around, the Jets are in not a great spot. I think Scheifele is more likely to be moved than Hellebuck, just because I think it's easier. There's a lot more suitors for a player like that. Whereas Hellebuck, while he would make any team better, not every team is going to pay big assets for a goalie. And
100%.
if you're the Jets,
especially if it's like Dallas or whatever, Dallas would do super well with bringing in Mark Scheifele, but it just wouldn't make sense for them to bring in Connor Hellebuck. I do think it might make them better. But obviously there's no even guarantee of that, but it wouldn't make sense. But Mark Scheifele, no team shouldn't trade for Mark Scheifele.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think Scheifele, at the end of the day, I think he resigns. He feels like a career Jet. I feel like there's some sort of, we have to give some signification to the fact that he's the first pick. He even mentioned in one quote that he is open to resign. Like, this was even in the offseason when he was not as spry on the idea. He even mentioned that he was, he gives some credence to players like Yzerman, who was his favorite growing up, who played their entire career with one team. And so I think that he might, there's a part of him that wants to stay here despite everything. And I would not be surprised to see the Jets give out the Blake Wheeler contract to him or something of the sorts. And also, like, we can't not mention the fact that he has, significant ties to Dale Hawerchuk.
Yes, I was going to bring that up too.
And that will mean a lot to both the city, the organization, him, all around. So I think that it makes a lot of sense to bring him back in the sense of the optics. The direction of the team is a whole other story, and it's far too long to get into. Again, I think we've already kind of chatted on it, but I'll be honest, if we re-sign either of them, I feel a lot better about the team going forward over the next 3 to 4 years. But that means, though, you got to make it work while Scheifele isn't getting that old, while Hellebuck is also not getting that old, and while your new players are coming up, your young studs are still on their darling contracts. They got to make room for players to come in and make a difference at a lower cap hit if you want to be a contending team. But yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else to really chat on there? I think that's pretty much it.
That's kind of it. Like, obviously, you and I haven't chatted Jets a whole ton over the course of the summer. We've been trying to do some more, like, league-specific stuff or whatever, but we both kind of agreed that we had a little bit of a void since throughout the season. Obviously, we have the SDPN outlet where we get to talk about the Jets on the reg, which is super fantastic, and we're really excited to get that started back up. So we kind of like to use this as our sort of platform to discuss beyond the Winnipeg Jets. So we'll have more content, about league-specific storylines or concepts or all those different kinds of things kind of as the year goes on. But for Jets-specific content, Game Over is the place to be to check all that out.
Winnipeg. SDPN YouTube channel, make sure to subscribe. Obviously our own Can't Teach Size YouTube channel, please do subscribe if you're watching it there. Thank you so much for watching the video. I apologize, my camera died in the middle of this, so I swapped to a different one and my lighting's all messed up, but that's fine. I'm definitely not freaking out about it at all.
You're still beautiful to me.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Lyss. I actually do. I really do. But anyways, thanks for tuning in. At NHL Chunky, at Lyss Hood, at Can't Teach Size. Check out Game Over Winnipeg. Thank you all for watching. Have yourselves a wonderful day. Like the video, subscribe. Blah, 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 blah.